to the Marketing Nomad Show, the fun pit stop for all things Instagram, where I also share my entrepreneurial journey, some of my lessons, wins, and challenges along the way, so it can inspire you to get started and grow on Instagram as well. Welcome to the Marketing Nomad Show. Kristine, how are we doing today?
I'm doing so well, Prit. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have us. I know that today we're going to talk about a ton of things that are going to be super, super fun. And well, if you guys don't know, Kristine is the founder of Holistic Narrative. And Kristine is also a tribe member of the Insta Savvy tribe. We've had many fun conversations, and I can't wait for this episode to roll out. I know it's going to be so much fun, so many giggles, and basically we're just here to talk. That's pretty much it.
I'm laughing because I think we both rival each other in giggling. So whoever listening to this, I apologize.
We do. All right. So, kind of telling all you guys what this episode is going to be about. We're going to talk a little bit about, goal setting, self-care, mindset, productivity, organization. So basically, we're going to be covering a ton of topics. So hold on to your seats and join us in this journey. All right, Kristine, let's get right into the nitty gritty of this episode. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you came up with the idea of holistic narrative and how has your journey been so far?
Yeah, absolutely. We've kind of spoken about this prior where it's been quite a crazy journey. I think when we first all get into solopreneurship or entrepreneurship, we think we're going to create the idea, everything's going to go well, we're just going to sail off into the sunset and we're good to go. And that's not quite what happened with me. I love wellness and well-being, and I really love business and marketing. I'm a full-time marketer and web designer. So I kind of at first was compartmentalizing myself where I would only talk about marketing in certain locations and well-being in other locations. And I came to a pivot or a point in my journey where I was like, this doesn't quite feel like me. I was only talking about body image, which is something super important to me, but it's not the only thing that's important to me. So I kind of pivoted holistic narrative to kind of being a well-being and career happy hour where we can discuss all these topics and it just kind of feel like a community where it is welcoming. So I'm just trying to help modern professionals use intentional strategies in the story of their life and business, whatever they feel is whatever they feel is most for them. I want them to be able to feel like in their gut, their narrative is correct and was dictated by them rather than society.
That is such a beautiful thought that you're kind of coming up with a community of like-minded professionals and kind of giving them that space to talk about their feelings, to talk about their journey, to talk about all the ups and downs. Because as I know as well, being a solopreneur, being an entrepreneur, or even a CEO, it's really lonely. A lot
Hmm.
of people don't understand that it is so lonely being one, and I love what you're doing. I'm super, super proud of how far you've come. I've actually watched her grow, and it has been amazing to watch Kristine grow. Now, I kind of want to touch upon one part that you talked about, and that was, that you were first, a wellness coach, a health and wellness coach, and then you pivoted in
Hmm.
between your journey, and now, with your well-being happy hour, career happy hour. Did I say that right? Yep.
Yep, well-being and career happy hour. You got it.
Well-being and career happy hour. There has been a pivot in the middle of your journey, and I feel like this is something that most of us are so scared of when we start our journey. We feel like we have to get everything figured out. We need to get something set, and then we can never pivot from it ever in our lives. So, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
No, absolutely. I mean, I come from a little bit of a privilege here because I do have a full-time job in marketing and web design, like I discussed. But I came to a place where I realized that just talking about one piece was not satisfying to me, and it didn't feel right in my gut. I was discussing with a friend, if I step onto a stage and can only talk about body image, I don't know if that was necessarily true to me and the way I am. So I decided, okay, let's see what feels best, because now I have this background in well-being because I've done certifications for nutrition and life coaching, and I started working on a body image one. I was literally in the midst of it when I decided to pivot. And I was like, okay, what is it that I need? Because no one wants to feel like they're disconnected to their own brand. So I think sometimes realizing that that gut instinct is important and you need to follow it, even though it is scary. I actually wrote a blog about this. I was like, I'm advocating for holistic narratives for other people, but I'm not actually following my own holistic narrative. And that what didn't feel right. So at that point, I was like, okay, where is the magic in combining all of my interests? I'm like, everyone is in either full time in their career or starting their own business. I'm kind of doing 9 to 5 as well because that's what I am at the moment. But and then also knowing we all have a well-being and we all have a narrative that we need to follow in that well-being as well. So I think I can now talk about the marketing and the business side that I love. And I can also talk about like making sure you don't burn out in your career or productivity or anything like that. So it's just been freeing to have all these topics now available to me.
It's so nice to hear about that. Honestly, like I told you guys, I have seen her pivot, and I know that, she is in such a happy place right now. We were talking about her new journey, and like I want to, kind of tell all of you out there is that you don't have to have everything figured out. Actually, no one
Absolutely.
has it figured out. I didn't have it. And that's exactly what I was telling Kristine. She said, "Well, Prit, it looked like you did have everything figured out." And I said, "No, it's just that I'm really good at acting." And that's what it is, guys. Whoever you see out there, whoever you think has it, has it all figured out. No, we don't. To be very honest with you, we're figuring it out along the way. And listening to my gut, listening to my instinct has always been such, I think, a huge thing for me. And I can credit my success to my gut. So when I first started out, there were 21 things that I was interested in marketing, from email marketing to I don't know what else is there, but I can't think of it. But SEO, Google ads, Facebook ads, and there's so many things that were interesting. And I listed it down. It was 21 things. That's how ridiculous it was. And after going through my freelancing journey, and I actually tried each one of these as jobs, as individual jobs, to see what worked with me, what I felt happy doing. And at the end of the day, we've chosen this path because we want to be happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've chosen the freedom to be happy, to make a choice there. So if we're not happy doing it, then what's the point?
Yeah, I
That's
was like, in my full-time career, I'm a marketing generalist. Like, I love touching SEO and web design and email marketing and inbound marketing and all of that. And I was like, why is it that now when I decided to create a brand that's supposed to represent me, because it is a personal brand as well, you always are representing yourself, even though you are providing services to others and it's for their problems. So I was like, why is it that now that I'm doing this for myself, I've decided that I now have to hone in on one specific thing. So I'm like, I'm a well-being generalist, I'm a marketing generalist, it will be fine.
yes, absolutely. So guys, I hope you're taking notes over here. All right, Kristine. All right, Kristine. So I'm kind of, going into how you're managing a 9 to 5 and a business on the side.
Mhm.
How are we with your organizational skills? What are some of the tips that you can give us to kind of be the maximum productive person that we can be, if that makes sense?
No, absolutely. This has been a lot of a trial and error. I will admit that before anything else. I am not perfect, and I never want to display perfection in anything, because just stop chasing perfection is probably my biggest motto. So what that kind of entailed for me was realizing, okay, when do I work best? Because I realized that my biggest productivity hours now is when I get up. And I had been working on holistic narrative only after my 9 to 5. And it was kind of bogging me down, slowing me down, so on and so forth. So I decided, okay, I am shifting those work hours for holistic narrative before my 9 to 5. So knowing when that time is for you is super necessary, because I know for some people, they like to burn the midnight oil. I don't. I prefer my 8 hours of sleep. So That's one thing for sure. And then another one specifically is time blocking for me. So I will time block like this is specifically holistic narrative time. This is specifically my 9 to 5. This is when I'm going to like self-care. This is when I'm going to work out, stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be where you feel like you're rigid in that, but I think providing that guidance to yourself is so important because it allows you to build in what is most important for you.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And definitely, this is a mistake that I have made. I mean, all three of the points that you mentioned, I'm just literally in my head, like tick, tick, tick. But, but it's true. For me, I used to sleep really late, get up really late, but my productivity time, is that what you call it, was actually early morning. And it
Mm-hmm.
was ridiculous that I was wasting that time sleeping, but I did, really think that sleep was precious and I would keep like 8 hours. So I switched it up. I had to work my entire tribe around my morning hours, which I guess is something that I would also want us to talk a little bit more about. Is managing a business that works with what your body is okay with and not
Mm-hmm.
what you think everyone else is working. There are a lot of people. I think it's like a fad on the internet that you're sleeping late and you're burning the midnight oil, but it all boils down to what you're comfortable with and what your mind when your mind is most active. So I love that you
Absolutely.
I love that you talked about that because if you had told me this 3 months ago, I think it would have made a huge difference and I would have started a little earlier. Uh, but yes, better late than never. And so that was definitely something that resonated with me as well. So do what makes you happy and figure out what works with you specifically. Stop copying everyone around there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you want to advocate. Sorry to use the word holistic narrative again, but you want to advocate for your own narrative. You want to make sure that the things you're doing is because it's true to you and not true because of what society has told you or what your friends have told you or what your family's trying to push you in. We all experience those outside influences, but I think even though you can admire people who are doing something specific, if it doesn't feel right or it's not working for you, you're actually not working to your productivity is not your worth. So I don't want to like put those two together, but you're not working to your highest potential, maybe is probably the better way to say it.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And, talking about potential, talking about productivity, let's kind of dive a little bit into goal setting right now. And
Mm-hmm.
what are your tips to help us, better with our goal settings, and what's an achievable goal? What's a goal that's way out of our reach and, kind of demotivates us? What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel with goal setting, specifically coming out of 2020, we're entering 2021. I think we have all realized that we can only influence and control certain parts of goals. That's just the case. Like if we had a travel goal this past year, it pretty much has gone out the window. So for me, it's been a lot of like, what is the word I can center myself around? And I can go towards that word no matter what. So in the past, it's been peace when I was trying to find my own body image piece. This past year, it was intention, which was really funny because I thought of intention as a completely different facet. I was thinking more so like I'm going to be intentional with the way I do things and so on and so forth. But I always thought it was business minded. And I was like, no, actually, I became intentional with the way I was living my life and whether or not I protected other people and how did I protect my family and anything of that nature. So using that word allows you to guide and be flexible, but also have a goal in mind. So right now with me, I have specifically have a word for holistic narrative and a word personally for myself. And I had to do that because for me, I want to make sure I have balance in my own personal life. But for holistic narrative, I want to make sure I take action for my own brand. So it's two very different things, but finding that word, going back to that, I think is super important. And kind of you can create your goals based off that. So once you have your word of the year, what I like doing is kind of discussing what are the things that will lead me to this word. and make me feel like that's been a success. And I feel that's easier to chase or accomplish rather than, I know everyone loves SMART goals and I do use SMART goals, but I think sometimes we get in the mindset where we need to control every part of the functionality, and giving yourself some time to breathe, especially in this time right now where things are so chaotic, has been beneficial to me. So I do use SMART goals if I'm chasing like a specific number, when I want like how many things I want to either sell or anything of that nature. But I don't think that you have to tie everything necessarily to a SMART goal.
I think that's a brilliant realization and such a wonderful insight. Because yes, definitely, I think SMART goals are the in thing, and that everyone does follow. And it's really, really nice to see a different take on it. So I hope you guys are taking notes, guys, because this is valuable information right here. All right, so
I
now
feel so honored right now.
I'm really learning a lot because, well, I've also read about SMART goals, but this is the first time that I've heard a different perspective to it. So, and it makes sense too. I mean, after the whirlwind of, 2020, and it looks like 2021 also will be, in some accordance to that
Yeah,
as well.
unfortunately.
It's definitely a nice way to be sane while you are trying to achieve your goals. And I feel like we're kind of entering into the next topic of this podcast episode, and that is mindset. How do you basically stay sane throughout the whole thing? I don't have any other question, and I think that's a simple way I can ask this question.
How do you stay sane when the world sometimes feels like it's falling apart? For me specifically, has been journaling's been very important to me. It allows me to get my thoughts out. It allows me to actually set those intentions I was talking about previously. Because sometimes I don't even realize a goal or an intention I want to achieve until it comes out in my journaling. And then I'm like, oh, I can go chase this. And this is still a part of my action word or my word of the year or anything of that nature. So that's been super important to me. And meditating's been also important to me. I am a subscriber to Spotify, and they have like a daily wellness playlist that my Google Home actually puts on for me every day. So I'm like, hey, Google. Oh, she's going to want to talk now. Never mind. But like making sure I listen to that, because it starts with a daily meditation, and they also journal on Shine, which is nice. And then what else do I do? Okay, I think another thing that's become important, I honestly just started this month. I was reading a book that was talking about burnout and completing the stress cycle. So working out after my 9 to 5, and then as I've discussed before, I usually have done most of my holistic narrative work for the day at that point as well, has been kind of a transition period where I'm able to kind of complete the stress cycle. Hey, I'm transitioning into like my own time, my self-care time, anything of that nature. So I think those things have been like the three most important things of like just allowing like working from home to be something that's kind of been natural for me, rather than feeling like I'm over, because I think working from home is great, but you're also at the point where we're constantly at home, so it can get overwhelming.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely agree with all of the things that you said. I've been in this journey for about 1.5 years now, and I only started journaling about 6 months ago, and
Mm-hmm.
it has transformed my life, like in ways I can't even begin to tell you or express. And it's so true what you say. Sometimes there are so many things. Well, my mind has about a million things going on at every single second. So journaling and of course meditation also, I've been doing it for the last 3 months, I guess I would
Mm-hmm.
say. Oh my god, what brilliant advice that is. I can't tell you how much it's calmed me down as a person. It's made my thoughts flow so much more easier, and I think I just feel a lot more sane, as you rightly answered the question. It's true, it's absolutely true that it helps.
Yeah, for sure. And I think sometimes people hear journaling and meditation and like this self-care routine or like morning routine, and it can get overwhelming because now on top of your daily whatever you have to do in the day, you feel like you now have to add all these self-care pieces to it. And I try to say, reel it back.
Mhm.
Is there like a 5-minute meditation that's like your go-to? Is there like, can you just do a gratitude journal where you're writing 3 or 4 or 5 things that you're grateful for? It doesn't necessarily always have to be this long form free writing. It can be whatever kind of just sets the tone for you in that day. So I feel like sometimes we say meditation and you feel like you have to meditate for 15 minutes and then journal, and then you're journaling for like 3 pages and like morning notes. And it doesn't always have to be that way. I think learning what works best for you and your actual day is the best part of it. Everything can be kind of flexible.
Absolutely. That definitely makes sense. I think, yes, I was definitely overwhelmed with the whole idea of meditation because I can't sit still for 5 minutes, let alone 25 to 30 minutes. So, okay, that was crazy for me. But I guess, yes, starting out with 5 minutes, starting out, slowly, and then taking that 5 minutes, even if it's just before you sleep or even in the morning as soon as you wake up, definitely changes the way you perceive the day or end the day. And as
Mm-hmm.
you said, journaling, I write a lot just personally. And I start writing, I can't stop. So I know that, I mean, back then I knew that if I started journaling, I wouldn't stop for 30 minutes. So I was like, how do I fit this into my day? And stuff like that. But, as you said, the bullet journal, just writing the main key points of the day, keeping a gratitude journal has helped me change the way I view my business and has helped me get out of a lot of spots that I felt very, very hopeless. And there are times like that, that happen in your business as well, those dips that we have. And I do want to touch upon, now that we're talking about dips and stuff like that, I do want to talk about, the part that you were talking to me about, where you had to pivot. And I really wanted to understand a little bit about that segment of how you had the courage, because it does take a lot of courage to get up and say, no, this is what I want to do, this is what I am going to do. And how did you get there?
Ooh, okay. It was kind of feel like when you have an idea and the idea is working and people are gravitating to it, it's so easy to just stay there, right? So when I was talking solely about like self-care and body image, people were gravitating to it because it is something we all experience. And it's something I still will definitely talk about. I never want to pivot completely away from it, but I knew it couldn't be the sole purpose of my business. And sitting there for so it was months, honestly. I was sitting there putting out new content and I'm just like, something feels wrong in my gut. Something feels wrong in my gut. And I realized I wasn't putting out any product, I was just putting out information. And I think that was really telling because I couldn't be clear enough to create any service or product because it was nerve-wracking to realize that something didn't feel right. So kind of deciding to combine my interests and find my own strength in that, I think was super important because then I can kind of decide, okay, so what are the things I really love and what are the cross interactions with these and what can I do on the end? And I think everyone, like I kind of stated before, everyone has a career, everyone has a well-being, obviously. So it was still a natural fit. So I think if you're coming to the point where your gut is constantly telling you like this isn't the right thing, to me, was it better to be a year in speaking about body image and have a successful career there and have to run back? Or was it easier for me to be a couple of months into this and be like, okay, I need to pivot? So I had the fortune of being able to pivot because I was only a couple of months in and kind of reintroduce my audience to something that wasn't necessarily so far from what we were initially talking about. We were just adding things to the pot. So I think it kind of depends. You have kind of two realms there. Is it something that's adjacent to and it's kind of easy to pivot? Or sometimes you may realize, like, hey, this is not for me anymore. I can't um, continue this specific business. I want a new business model. And I think it's important to be happy long term. I never want to say or give advice where someone feels like, oh, Kristine told me that if I'm not happy, I should just immediately like close up shop. But I think it's important to listen to your gut and your body and just like, hey, what is it that I want to do? And is this right for me?
Oh, that's really really helpful. Definitely, I think when you said just because Christine said that doesn't mean that you should immediately, but it's all about listening to your gut. And I feel as entrepreneurs, we have that innate instinct. I think that
Mm-hmm.
we have it much more in a much more bigger magnitude. I think everybody has instincts. Okay, let me get that right. Everybody has instincts, but I think we know how to sense it. We
Yeah.
are more receptive to it. I think, yes, that is how I would put it across.
I
So,
think
yeah, sorry, tell us.
no, you're good. I think we definitely all do have instincts, and I feel like everyone has varying degrees of it, like you stated. So just leaning into that is, I think it even goes to like, is my 9 to 5 not something I want to do? And just, or is it something, where do I need a pivot in life to bring happiness to my life? So whether it is your 9 to 5 or changing your business model or changing your habits throughout the day, like figuring out what fits best for your narrative.
Yes, absolutely. That definitely makes a lot of sense. And, I think we kind of touched upon this when we were talking about your routine, and that was self care. And I kind of want to touch a little bit more into that before, we wrap this episode up.
Mm-hmm.
But, Kristine, we all know that self care is important and stuff like that. But a huge question that gets asked is what exactly is self care? Like, what do you categorize as self care? Yes, it's such a and this is something that has like literally plagued me a lot because everybody's like self-care, and I'm like, yes, I'm on it, but what is it? So talk to us a little bit and what are your tips?
So you know what's funny? I think that self-care is so easily misconstrued as like painting your nails and doing a face mask, unfortunately. Which is great. Don't get me wrong. I love including that in my self-care. But I think you need to also push yourself sometimes in your self-care. So funny enough, I kind of started doing research on self-care at some point, and I realized there were multiple buckets. So I created the holistic narrative continuum, which has like different types of self-care within that. So it's like this is gonna get a little winded, but I feel like this is where to take notes. So practical self-care. So like what are like the usual tasks that you can use to like complete your basic aspects of your life and prevent stress? So I usually compare this to like eating, drinking water, making sure your finances are where you want them to be, stuff like that. You can then also categorize as like joyful movement. So anything that's kind of a physical activity that you enjoy, whether that's walking or picking up weights or doing Zumba or anything of that nature. um, Emotional health. So I feel like this sometimes is the harder part of self-care that you don't want to deal with. So making sure that you give yourself the space and the place to like process, reflect, express your emotions. Journaling is that for me. So just having that place is super important. Cultivating relationships and making sure you're in contact with your friends and family members. Being connected is so important to community. So that's also self-care. Mental stimulation. So like anything that like puzzles, stuff like that is a piece, even creativity is a piece of that self-care. Practicing spirituality, anything that kind of like nurtures your spirit or allows you to like realize there's something bigger than yourself out there is very important. I know for some people that's yoga, anything of that nature. So whatever feels right there. And then intentional environment. So just making sure that your environment is supportive to the lifestyle and narrative you want to live in your everyday well-being. So there's a lot of different areas of self-care. I think it just gets categorized as like it has to be one thing or another. So I think it's important to realize like, hey, I can either journal or I can put a face mask on or I can speak to a therapist or I can practice yoga. And that's all part of self-care. You're nurturing your body and yourself.
Absolutely. I definitely, this is the first time that I have heard that there are different versions of self-care, and it of course makes sense now that you say it. I'm thinking, yes, it makes sense that despite the fact that I had the question that what is self-care, but yes, I actually took down notes. If you guys are watching on YouTube when I play, you will see that I actually took down notes because genuinely this is a question that has plagued me and still plagues me as to what is self-care. I do yoga, I run on the treadmill, and I feel calm after that, but is that considered self-care? And then you just told me, yes, that is absolutely self-care. And there's practical, joyful, emotional health, relationships, mental stimulation, spirituality, and intentional environment. So yes, I've taken down notes. I really hope that you guys took down notes as well, because that is some amazing stuff. And I feel like, yes, sometimes I've thought about this and I'm like, yes, okay, painting my nails and putting a face mask. How many times a week can I do that? Because that's the self-care I know. But now that there's so many things in the mix, you can definitely choose one day for practical self-care, then emotional health, and reaching out to your loved ones another day, and stuff like that. So definitely, keeping all these categories helps. And you were going to say something.
No, yeah, I think for me, it's like what nurtures my spirit, what nurtures me. And I think that's like the most important pieces of self-care. Um, when I created the continuum, it was kind of putting together a couple of different things that I in my teachings and what I was learning. And not my teachings, my learnings would probably be the better way to say that. But I realized that like when you get overwhelmed, you want to like move all the gears at once for self-care, and you can't do that. Like you pull one lever, the other ones start to move. So I think it kind of gets hard sometimes to figure out where do you want to begin. And I think self-care and your narrative can be kind of put together here, where just where do you want to flourish more? Start with one lever. And I feel like that always sounds like the ever-changing process to like give yourself space to grow. How many people like start on a joyful movement journey and then they realize like, hey, I want to now like start journaling, or they start like getting a part of a community and this community teaches them things where now they want to learn more about like their creativity or anything of that nature. So I think it's important to realize that it doesn't necessarily have to be one thing. It's just anything that is good for yourself.
Perfect. I think the power just went out and it was just darkness for a second over there. I'm not sure if that caught on camera. But yes, that's what happened over here.
No, you're
Um,
good. My microphone decided to drop it like 2 minutes, like a couple of minutes ago, and I was just like, why are you doing that?
Struggles of being a content creator, honestly. There are so many things that go on. I think you were part of my masterclass where some idiot just decided to put firecrackers at midnight, and that was exactly when I was doing my masterclass, and it was just 5 minutes of boom, 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 and I'm like, so my limiting belief path.
But I feel like the best thing about that was you did not flinch. Like there were booms and you were like, I'm going with this because this is what I've discussed. This is what I'm doing. And I feel like that was just so much of your personality that I appreciated so much.
Thank you, because in my head, there were all sorts of words, something like that. Like I was like, what? 12? It was like I chose that time because nobody makes a sound. And right on that day, someone was just blasting firecrackers. But yes.
But I think there's a lesson to be like said here, because I feel like initially you always have like everything has to be perfect, right? And because you fell into a situation where something wasn't going to be perfect, you were like, oh no. And like, oh my goodness. But from the outside, me looking at it, I was like, look at this. She has it completely under control. She's still going, like nothing's phasing her. And it's just so funny how like there's that internal imposter syndrome that kicks in really fast, but you don't know how other people are perceiving it. So there's a lesson there as well.
Absolutely, definitely. And I think it really relates to life as well, because
Mm-hmm.
whether it's business or personal life, you can prepare all you want. You can be 100% ready for anything that comes along, but then later life will throw something else that you were completely unready for, and then that just knocks you out. And I think the trick is A, to have really good acting skills, and B, to know that, regardless of what happens, you've got this. You're gonna
Mhm.
make it through it. And, it's just how life is. And that all these are just there to make you a better person. So now if I'm ever doing a class at any time and they're firecrackers, I know what to do. I'm like, I got this. I got this shit.
Apologize and just keep going, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just part of one of the fun experiences that I talk about, like on this podcast. So, Kristine, I feel like we've talked about so much today. I have actually literally written notes. For those of you who are watching this on the YouTube video, you can see my sticky note over here. Really good, important points that I'm definitely going to keep in mind and follow through myself. So, Kristine, if you were to wrap up this entire episode into 3 solid, quick,
Ooh,
actionable tips that my audience can take away, what would it be?
okay. I feel like the three most important guiding pieces for me are figuring out what works best for you. So when is when do you work the best? And like what how can you time block that into your life is super important. I'm trying to keep these concise. Notice that self-care isn't necessarily one specific thing. It can be a multitude of things, and noticing that as soon as you're kind of nurturing yourself, it is part of your self-care. And number three, is it so funny that we've spoken about so much that I'm like, what is number three? um, let's see. I feel like just stopping the chase of perfection and not giving into societal pressure. I know that's so broad and it sounds so scary, but we're living in an era of like chronic dieting, hustle mentality, information overload, and just knowing you're not defined by it. You can kind of set your own pace and just live your own, I'm going to go back to the word, but live your own narrative. I feel like that's just such an important piece of it. And it's specifically why I named the business holistic narrative. Like, what is most holistic to your own narrative?
I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning, but I really, really like the phrase holistic narrative. I feel like it encompasses so much deep meaning and it truly resonates with me. So, Kristine, those were 3 amazing actionable tips that I'm pretty sure that my audience are so, so lucky and so grateful to have. And Kristine, if my audience, wants more information from you, they want to follow you, they want to learn more, they want to come on to your community that you are forming as well, how can they find you? Where do they reach you?
Absolutely. So holisticnarrative.com is probably the best way to find me, just because it has the information for the podcast and the Instagram account and the Twitter account. Um, so if you want to find me on Instagram, you also can find me at Holistic Narrative. And it is also, it's Holistic NAR, NARR on Twitter. But I also use my personal account on Twitter, which is Kristine Izia, IZA. So yeah, I would totally love to talk more about just helping modern professionals refine their narrative in life and business. So if that is of any interest to you, I would love to have you so we can talk some more.
Yes, absolutely, guys. I'm going to put all of these links in the description box below as well. So if you want to reach out to Kristine, either to chat more about this, because believe me, she is the expert in her field. And if you want to chat more with her, you want to join her community, you want to talk a little bit about organization, goal setting, self-care, mindset, productivity, she is your go-to person, okay? So I'm going to put all the links again in the description box below, and feel free to reach out to her. Thank you, Kristine, for joining the Marketing Nomad Show podcast. It has been such a pleasure having you on here. So, any last words for my audience?
Well, thank you for having me first off. It's been the first time that I'm actually discussing kind of what's the new journey for holistic narrative. So it's been very exciting to be able to talk about that. And I'm just grateful to have the platform and the support from you.
Thank you so much, Kristine. And like I told you earlier, it's an absolute honor that you're sharing your first thoughts about your new direction with me. And I'm so, so glad to be a part of this journey. And I get to see you grow as an amazing and awesome coach with Holistic Narrative. That was Kristine with us, founder of Holistic Narrative. Thank you, Kristine, for being on the show. Guys, if you're out there listening, thank you so much for listening up until here. I really think that you must have, enjoyed this episode. We definitely enjoyed shooting for this episode as So I hope to see you guys in my next episode. Talk soon. Bye, guys.